I have created several videos on the benefits of spending extensive amounts of time shooting a DSO to make the best possible image. And this has led to a number of persons posing what is a very good question. How do I know that I should keep on shooting? Or its counterpoint question, how do I know if I have enough integration time? There are two key clues within an image that indicate there is more information to be gathered. One is hints of saturation or color, and the other is hints of texture, which can show up as rippling, latticeworks, and waves. We can see all of that within this image of the Horsehead Nebula and its immediate surroundings. The detail within the Horsehead Nebula itself stands out within the bright starlight emitted by the star Alnitek, which is out of frame just to the left. But within the frame, there are 9 regions, with hints of color saturation developing, and slight, almost transparent or ghostly ripples, lattices and waves, which indicate there is yet more detail to be pulled out of the image. Detail which can only be pulled out with more integration time. In fact, the only region within the image that I would say at this time has adequate integration is the nebulosity around the lump star, and even then it could be improved. And while the Horsehead Nebula near the center looks to show a great deal of detail, if we were to zoom in, it would reveal the detail is gritty, and there are gaps within the information. Not to mention, the dark nebula looks black, and with sufficient exposure, we discover that dark nebula aren't really black. They are covered with dust and filled with activity, like this. But it takes a lot of exposure to develop that out. This is NGC 1333, a striking nebula with a rich molecular cloud, dark nebulosity, and young newly formed stars still embedded within the molecular cloud, which give the cloud its amazing and colorful glow in places. And this finished image is the result of over 17 hours of integration. There is more detail hidden within this image. If I were to put, say, another 17 hours of integration on it, we would pull up yet more structure here, here, here and here, and probably in the darkness along various places along the edge of the photo. If you pause the video and inspect those points closely, you'll see that in those regions that I just circled, there are hints of developing saturation. Now, those are hints. There may not be more saturation to be had, but if you see a little color starting to turn up in an area, chances are if you give that area more integration time, in time, you'll pull out more color, and the color will become more localized. In other words, it'll become more centered around whatever the origin is. Likewise, in those areas, you'll see that there are very slight hints of the structure, the texture, latticework, scalloping, waves and such that I mentioned from earlier. And those are all very solid hints that more detail can be pulled out of those regions with more integration time. But I think for aesthetic purposes, this image is effectively done. One can actually put too much integration time into an image, I feel. If we keep adding information, that will add structure, and the image will eventually come to look overly busy. As it stands now, there is plenty of structure within the image, and the eye is naturally drawn to the 3 lines of detail and color saturation. So, on the first night that I collected photons on this target, I was only able to gather 223 minutes of integration. And the outcome was this after full development. The image shows a lot of potential, but it's nowhere near done. It needs a great deal more integration time. Here's how to tell. One clue is the lack of saturation. Anywhere where you see a hint of color is an indication that it's worth investing more in integration time into it. More integration time is likely to lead to more saturated color, and in particular, saturation developing especially around the sources of origin, so that as the color develops, it will also develop structure right alongside it. Faint structure also hints in several places that more structure can also be resolved with more integration time. The most obvious place is here, right up in this region around the bright central star. We see evidence of ripples and folds and other divisions within the molecular cloud. At the moment, the structure is weak, barely there. But when you see such things within an image, it almost always indicates it's worth investing more integration time. The more time, the more this detail will stand out. There is also evidence of structure to be resolved in the darker outskirts, away from the very bright stars at the center of this nebulosity. At the current level of under 4 hours of total integration, the edges of the molecular cloud are soft, fuzzy, and seem to just fade into nothingness. But the subtle rippling within that soft fading is an indicator there is more information to be had, and more integration time will reveal it, allowing for better development with such tools as sharpness, fine contrast, the unsharp mask, and Photolab 8's fairly unique Clearview Plus tool, which is something like a Blur Exterminator helper, It's a very, very powerful tool that I'll go into more depth on in a future video. Now just below the bright stars at the top of this structure, we have more stars more deeply embedded within the molecular cloud, right down here. The light is scattered and diffuse, but once again we have more hints of ripples both in darker areas and in lighter areas. We have hazy embedded points down here, and minuscule offshoots of the primary cloud structure right here and right here. We also see strong hints of hidden detail even in the darker regions within the structure, right down here for example. These faded, nearly see-through ripples, which can create the illusion that they should be black or almost black, will develop a lot more brightness and stand out much more clearly with more integration time. Let's go back to the full-size view of the nebula. Even from this far-out perspective, we can see clear indicators of hidden structure here, 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 and here. In fact, the whole image strongly indicates that there is more structure to be developed out. I'll illustrate by ramming up the appearance of detail using Photolab 8's Clearview Plus tool. Like I said, it, when used right in conjunction with the micro contrast and sharpness tools, works kind of like a localized blur exterminator helper. So here we go, let's turn up the detail. And at the same time, I'll also enhance the vibrance to show the potential for color hidden within this nebula. Now what can be accomplished by ramming up the tools is limited because the information simply is not there yet. The image needs more integration time. But ramming up the Clearview tool and the Vibrance tool show the direction things are likely to go with more integration time. Over 2 preceding nights, I was able to gather another 491 minutes of integration time, or just over 8 hours. That additional 8 hours resulted in this image. Better, natural color is beginning to show through. And in the brighter regions of the image, we are starting to pick up more detail, especially throughout this line over here. But that's to be expected, it's where the illumination is best within the image. However, lack of integration leaves soft and faded gaseous structures down here, also over here, and up here to the right. Yet the rippling within those structures indicates far more detail can be brought out. And this means it's worth investing another clear night on the target. A few days later I had such an opportunity. On a near moonless night, NGC 1333 got 15 degrees over the horizon at just about 8 p.m. my time. Since I don't have to deal with light pollution and gradients, for me 15 degrees is adequate to begin shooting. And it would pass pretty much right over the center of the sky through the night, and then descend down into the west, and be at around 40 to 45 degrees when nautical dawn happened. As we move toward winter, nights are getting long at this latitude. And so during that long night, I was able to gather 10 hours of integration. The sky was completely clear, and the seeing was just about perfect, with guiding being about 0.6 to 0.7 through the night. Now, to my knowledge, there is no way to be certain just how much of an improvement you will get by investing the integration time, but I do look at this as like an investment. You never can be certain with an investment until you put the effort into it and wait to see what the outcomes are. In the case of astrophotography, we invest our time and our equipment into a DSO, and then we have to decide for ourselves when the investment is adequately mature. However, it's not guesswork. The soft faded hints at ripples along the outer regions of the nebula, the concealed and soft structures within the dark regions, and the coloration, which was still becoming more defined and enriched each time I invested more integration time, all strongly indicated that there was more information to be pulled out of this DSO, and that could only be pulled out of it with more integration time. And that additional 10 hours proved in the end to be worth it, because it yielded this. Now, the image isn't finished. I mean, for me it's finished, but were I to invest more integration time in it, I would pull out more detail right here, over here, up around here, off over here, and over here and here. I can be reasonably certain of this just by using the simple criteria that I've already mentioned, watching for hints of developing color, for signs of saturation improvement with further integration, and watching for increasing definition and improving structure within the lattice work, ripples and eddies within the gas and dust of this nebulous region. You will tend to see the first and most substantial improvements in the brightest regions of an image, a moderate pace of improvement within regions of moderate brightness, and a slow pace of improvement within regions of darkness. And this is simply because the lower the light emanating from that area, the slower your camera can gather information from that area. However, I'm not going to invest that time. For me, this image is done. If I make it much more detailed, the image will simply become too busy, and the eye will be drawn all over the place, which doesn't make for an artfully beautiful image. It makes for a scientifically detailed image that would be useful for scientific assessment. So down the road, I might add that additional 10 to 20 hours of integration time to this image, should I decide that I ever want to analyze this image for scientific purposes later on. And ultimately, when shooting, you yourself will have to decide how much is enough, and that is the appropriate place to call it quits and develop your final image. There's one last little trick, or rather technique, that you can use to test the quality of the integration of an image. Simply zoom in on it to somewhere between 120 and 200%. We all know that images appear to degrade as we zoom in on them, because as you zoom in, the pixels of which an image are comprised become larger and larger to the eye, and so that begins to make an image look gritty. But if a little zooming begins to make an image's information look gritty or broken up, then it is a strong indicator that your image needs more integration time. Let's go back to that image of the Horsehead Nebula that I used at the beginning of this video. At 100% or no zoom, the Horsehead Nebula looks good. But if I zoom in on it, even just a 150% zoom begins to reveal a lot of grittiness within the image. This happens because the developing software is doing its best to work with what information is there, but information is lacking. So the information is literally broken up. As I invest more and more integration time into this image, I'll be able to zoom further into the image and get good results, which will happen simply because more information is there. Eventually, zooming is going to cause any image to really deteriorate. But most images should be able to withstand a little zooming and still look good. So if you zoom in, say, only 20-30% and the image is already starting to look like it's degrading, it means you need more integration time. To assess for degradation, watch in particular for broken up and gritty regions within the image. You'll tend to find this especially in darker areas of an image. Whenever I begin shooting an image, like the Silver Sliver Galaxy here, I approach the image not as a photograph, but as a project. I guess like creating a painting, and the project will simply take as long as it takes to complete. I use my eyes and assess the potential for saturation and structural development within the image based on the standards that we just went over. This image of the Silver Sliver Galaxy, for example, I shot in the 4 hours that I was waiting for IC 434, the Horsehead Nebula, to get to about 15 degrees over the horizon a couple nights ago. And as far as I'm concerned, that 4 hours of integration was enough. This image is done. Other images, like the Tulip Nebula that I showed you at the beginning of this video, I spent 8 nights on. When all the areas of color and detail potential are resolved out to my visual satisfaction, for me, that's when the image is done. Returning to the Horsehead Nebula, as I continue shooting it, I will look for improvements in detail in the ripples down here, up here, on the left upper side over here and here, and in the lump star nebulosity, I feel a little more detail and color can be brought out of the fine structure within that small region of nebulosity. But in particular, I am very certain a great deal more detail hides right along this ridge here and along the base of the horsehead, and that with enough exposure, I can bring some illumination to the dark dust that comprises the pillar and arms of the horsehead. But it's an investment, and only time will tell. And for me, that indicates the potential for learning and discovery, and when you think about it, that is part of the adventure that makes astrophotography so special. Thank you for watching. If you have any thoughts, questions, or observations, please leave them in the comments section below. And you can follow the development of the Horsehead project in the Sky Story Astrobin. The link is in the description. Now it's getting cold and rapidly moving toward winter here at our backwoods homestead in eastern Canada. So I'm off to go split some firewood and then harvest some cold weather mushrooms. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed because right now it's the dark of the moon. It's going to be cloudy tonight, but I'm hoping it clears up very soon. I would love to get another 10 or 20 hours on the Horsehead as soon as possible. Because only when that happens can I show you whether or not the investment of that additional time on the Horsehead will be worth it. Now, if the weather's clear where you are, get out there and shoot the sky.